Hello and welcome to my inquiry project. Today I will explore the topic of transportation in the world and really tackle what I call the modern transportation question. And it really starts off with exploring how trains have integrated into the modern day and where their roots have been. Now, first I believe we should discuss the origin of rail transportation and its beginnings in America. Rail transportation exploded in America after the B&O line, also known as the Baltimore and Ohio Railroad line. It was a major catalyst and can be argued that it quickened the Industrial Revolution in the United States. I mean, it truly was a force to be reckoned with. It can be argued that the pinnacle of this achievement of industrialization is highlighted by the Transcontinental Railroad line. Now, I don't want to just take my words for it. I believe the sentiment is echoed in the work of Walmart in the novel The Great Railroad Revolution, The History of Trains in America, as it really takes an outsider view of American train development and shows that it was really America that picked up the ball on trains and turned it into something entirely new. Now, before I continue with the presentation, I do need to address an elephant in the room, which is how come I'm not addressing the very beginnings of trains, with the steam engine, and even with Europe. How come there's no discussion on that? Well, to address these concerns, I would first like to start by saying that I'm not going to be discussing the steam engine because while the steam engine was a pinnacle development and was necessary for the train to exist as the train utilized a steam engine, it simply did not transform America nor the world in the way that a train did. And the reason why I'm not choosing to talk about the very beginnings of rail transportation in Europe and markedly in Great Britain where it started is because while Great Britain was able to utilize the train to great effect, it really was the United States of America that brought the railroad and what a train was into a new light. It really showed how you could revolutionize a train. Now, moving on, we can talk about why trains were used. Because, of course, America picked up the train, but why did they pick up the train? Well, the three reasons are quite obvious. First off, it became the fastest form of travel, mail, and shipping. I mean, of course, trains were extremely fast compared to the horse and buggy. I mean, there was just no contest. It became utilized for people traveling, for the United States with their mail, and for just companies, for shipping things. I mean, of course, the cost for train tickets were not as affordable when the trains first came out, but they rapidly got very affordable to the public, to the point in which the public was able to utilize trains for simple mundane tasks to moving across the country. And finally, and probably the most important, is that they were used so much because the government saw them as such a great tool, not only for mail, but also with things like the Civil War. It was such a critical component of the Union's strategy to have trains for the transportation of arms and goods. And so trains were definitely heavily used in the past, and there was great need to have them. But recently there's been what I call a great injustice, and that is the fact that trains are gone from the public eye, really. There's no longer an emphasis on them. I mean, we only see trains talked about if there's, a subway system like in the northeastern America. And it isn't really a good thing to have only select amounts of trains and rail transport, because the working class needs more train options. Because, I mean, we don't want to admit it, but a good portion of Americans sadly can't afford cars or afford certain methods of transport. And rail transportation would fix this issue. But there's an even greater issue. It's that modern transportation has a major failing currently. And the fact is that global warming is a major issue. And our transportation is to blame. I mean, cars and trucks alone account for 1/5 of all United States carbon dioxide emissions. That's just insane. And as a whole, the U.S. transportation sector accounts for 30% of all U.S. global carbon dioxide emissions. This has been marked as one of the core problems of global warming. However, trains only account for approximately 1% of all these emissions. And so we can definitely see a difference in how trains operate comparative to the most modern transportation options that exist today. Now, we have to see how trains win, of course. Now, trains definitely stack up when we compare them to 18-wheelers. And I think it's only fair because 18-wheelers are the only other form of bulk good transportation. Not only are trains more fuel efficient, they're also better for our environment. I mean, the best way I can explain this is that trains require only 1/4 the fuel per pound of weight to ship compared to a truck. And they can hold over 4 times the weight of items. And so not only are they more fuel efficient, but they have only 1/4 the greenhouse gas emissions. Think about that. Not only is it 4 times more fuel efficient, but it produces 1/4 the greenhouse emissions. And it moves much faster, more cost effective, and you can store much more product on a train. It really just crushes trucks. But of course, just talking about trains in all this good light and how they're better than trucks and cars and everything else, that's simply not true. Trains do have a bad side to them. And the bad side is that they have issues with construction of the railroad. It's quite expensive. It gets to be $1 million to $2 million per mile of rail line that you're putting down. It's insanely expensive. It is so expensive, in fact, that that's been a cited major reason as to why we don't see them implemented more so in modern history. Talking back to the Great Injustice slide that I had, this shows why. I mean, it's too expensive for local and state governments to afford this. Imagine Bexar County attempting to afford $2 million per mile of rail line. It's illogical. And railroad companies sadly don't want to foot the bill either. So there's already a major issue with trains attempting to be modernized. And it gets even worse. Because if you're going to try and install railroad tracks, it has a profound impact on local ecosystems. In fact, it's so bad that trains can cause water pollution and soil erosion just from the installation of the railroad tracks. It causes a loss in biodiversity in both insects and birds. And it's truly a massive issue that we have yet to fix. And while it's can be argued that there's solutions in effect with things such as rail dampeners and sleeper tracks, this does not solve the problem that trains still have a long way to go from being the perfect option. And with this, the main question of my inquiry project comes to bear, which is, are trains still worth it? With the massive amount of baggage they have, the expensive cost to install rail lines, and the fact that they are still very damaging to the local ecosystems in which you install them. Even with this, I would have to argue absolutely trains are still worth it. I mean, if we just look at one aspect of trains being that they help the working class, it's already a major incentive. I mean, we have to face the music here. The United States has a massive wealth inequality. Many Americans live below the poverty line or are in the working class and can't afford to buy cars. In fact, 11% of all Americans said that they depended on rail transportation just to get to their job. And what's even worse is the majority of this 11% are people of color. When we don't build trains to help these people, we're disproportionately hurting people of color. And this is just an injustice to the people that deserve jobs, that deserve the ability to be able to go and have a reliable, affordable form of transportation. And so I definitely think that it's a massive incentive to modernize our rail transportation as to not only help these people, but to help our economy. And so I say that we must look towards the big picture here. And it really breaks down to energy intensity. And that's where trains truly shine. They require the least amount of energy per passenger, as a car needs about a megajoule per person in the most fuel-efficient car. But a train only requires a tenth of this amount per passenger. It shows an absolute advantage over cars. Trains are faster than cars, they're better for the environment, and they save more energy. I mean, with this all in mind, it's no wonder that even second world countries such as China have already started to expand 2/3 of their rail lines. I mean, truly, looking at the bigger picture of trains, it breaks down to the today and tomorrow. And we have to look at it as the train being the solution. We need to tackle the problems of tomorrow. And the train allows us to do this by saving fuel and producing less greenhouse gases to help stop global warming. But it also solves the today, for helping struggling working class Americans be able to get to their job, pay their bills, and support the economy. And trains are the next step to making a better, cleaner world. It's for this reason that when I'm posed with the question, are trains still worth it? I would have to adamantly say that of course they are. Thank you so much for joining me in my inquiry project and discussion.